Now I want to turn to fireworks on the Senate floor tonight. Senator Elizabeth Warren reprimanded for a scathing speech about President Trump's nominee for Attorney General, Senator Jeff Sessions. CNN congressional correspondent Phil Mattingly has that for us. Phil.
Don, it's no secret that Senate Democrats have had major problems, even disdain for many of President Trump's nominees. They've been pulling every procedural lever they can to try and slow the process down, because at this point, that's as good as they're going to do on their own. They don't have the power to stop any of these nominations. But tonight, a dramatic moment on the Senate floor. We've seen over the last couple of days and nights, Democrats really kind of come to the floor and stretch out the debate. Senator Elizabeth Warren, the liberal icon, took her turn tonight attacking Senator Jeff Sessions, the nominee to be Attorney General. And as such, Warren went hard after Sessions' 1986 failed judgeship. And as part of that judgeship failed in large part because of allegations of racism directed at Sessions. Warren, as she was going after these issues, was quoting from the official record of that judgeship, quoting people like the late Senator Ted Kennedy, and also a letter sent by Coretta Scott King, the widow of Martin Luther King Jr. But in doing so, she triggered a mostly little-used Senate rule, and she was warned by Republicans to stop. That rule basically says senators cannot impugn the motives of other senators. So Republicans who controlled the chamber told Warren to stop. Warren continued going on. That's when Senator Mitch McConnell stepped in. He said this.
They are mothers, daughters, sisters, fathers, sons, and brothers.
Mr. President.
They are...
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
The senators impugn the motives and conduct of our colleague from Alabama as warned by the chair. Senator Warren, quote, said Senator Sessions has used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens. I call the senator to order under the provisions of Rule 19.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, I am surprised that the words of Coretta Scott King are not suitable for debate in the United States Senate. I ask leave of the Senate to continue my remarks.
Is there objection?
Object.
I appeal the ruling.
Objection is heard. The senator will take her seat.
Now, Don, as long as Senate Republicans control the chamber, there's very little recourse for Senator Warren, but she was essentially told to stop and to sit down, and she was no longer allowed to speak. As you can imagine, she did not appreciate this fact and immediately took to Twitter afterwards, laying out a string of tweets attacking Republicans, attacking Sessions, and attacking the Senate Majority Leader, including this one where she said, "Tonight, Senate Majority Leader silenced Mrs. King, Coretta Scott King's voice on the Senate floor," and millions who are afraid and appalled by what's happening in our country. Don, one of the big issues we've seen, even though Democrats can't stop any of these nominations, is the energy that they've seen coming from the outside, kind of buoying these efforts to do whatever they can to slow the nominations up. As you've seen from the tweets from Senator Warren and from a lot of her colleagues retweeting her, tweeting themselves, this is clearly an issue where they believe they can kind of harness some of that energy, and it's going to be very interesting to watch going forward. Worth noting, Senator Jeff Sessions will be confirmed tomorrow evening as the next Attorney General of the United States. But what Democrats can take from this process, can take from this very dramatic moment, will be very interesting to see as they try and rally their party in the wake of the stunning November defeat and really kind of as they've tried to find themselves over the last couple of months. Don?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mattingly. I appreciate that. I want to bring in now Senator Elizabeth Warren. She joins me now by phone. Senator, thank you so much this evening. Just to explain again to our viewers, you were reading a letter on the Senate floor. It is from, and I have it here in my hands, it's from Coretta Scott King, and it was to Senator Strom Thurmond at the time, and it was talking about Jeff Sessions, who then was being considered as a federal judge, correct? And you were just quoting from her letter.
That's right.
And what happened?
So I read the letter because Coretta Scott King, in her letter, had discussed what Jeff Sessions had done while he was the U.S. attorney for Alabama. And she walks through his prosecution of civil rights workers, what it was that Jeff Sessions did to the black vote and to try to chill the black vote, to try to keep African Americans away from the polls. And the letter is powerful. The letter is deeply moving. And the letter is an important historical document. In 1986, it moved a Republican-controlled Senate to say no to confirming him as a federal judge. And yet today, when I went down to the floor of the United States Senate to do what I was supposed to do, which is debate the nomination of Jeff Sessions, and I wanted to read her letter, I was told that I had committed a Rule 19 violation by impugning Mr. Sessions. And I just want to be clear here, by telling the truth, by reading a document that had been written back in 1986 by Coretta King. I was impugning Mr. Sessions, and I was the one ruled out of order, and I am not permitted to speak on the floor of the Senate again until after the vote
for Jeff Sessions. And again, this is they said you were in violation of Rule 19 of the standing rules of the Senate to impugn another senator or senators any conduct or motive unworthy of becoming a senator. The interesting thing is that he's now being considered now for Attorney General. How are you supposed to criticize him in any way? Is this are they interpreting this in whatever way they want? Is that your argument here?
Yes.
Is it a selective enforcement?
They're interpreting it however. Let's just be clear. There have been some hard words on the United States Senate through the years. But all of a sudden, when I'm reading something, a truthful statement from Coretta Scott King, the answer is, nope, can't say that. Well, I'm going to tell you this. They can shut me up, but they can't change the truth. What Coretta Scott King talked about Jeff Sessions doing back in 1986 is something every American should know about. And it's
Do you have the letter in front of you,
Senator
Senator?
Should think about before they vote to confirm him as Attorney General of the United States.
Do you have the letter in front of you? Can you read the passage that you were reading at the? I think it starts with anyone who has used. It starts with Dear Senator Thurmond, I write to express my sincere opposition to the confirmation of Jeff B. Sessions as a federal district court judge for the Southern District of Alabama. Do you want to pick it up from there? Senator, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're coming and going on me here.
So I will read it. I will read it because you can't
Please
hear
do.
me. And then it says from the Southern District of Alabama. My professional and personal roots in Alabama are deep and lasting. Anyone who has used the power of his office as United States Attorney to intimidate and chill the free exercise of the ballot by citizens should not be elevated to our courts. And then it goes on. It's not that much longer, but she says, I do sincerely urge you to oppose the confirmation of Mr. Sessions. And it's signed, sincerely, Coretta Scott King.
Yes.
What was harmful about that? Because it talks about voters and for his reprehensible conduct, he should not be rewarded with a federal judgeship.
Yes. That's the part that you really have to look at here. It's that we can't talk on the floor of the Senate about what Jeff Sessions did back in the 1980s, how he worked to keep blacks from having access to the ballot box. We can't talk about that as we debate his nomination to be the Attorney General of the United States. That is fundamentally wrong.
It says,
if the truth hurts, then that's all the more reason to hear it. That's reason for the American people to hear it.
The letter says Mr. Sessions has used the awesome power of his office in a shabby attempt to intimidate and frighten elderly black voters. Do you think that the language in this letter was too harsh, maybe?
Those are the facts. And Coretta Scott King was a witness to those facts. These weren't stories handed round. She was an eyewitness to history, and she is relating what happened, what Jeff Sessions did, what happened during the civil rights movement. That's what she's doing here, and I think those facts are relevant to the question of whether he is fit to be Attorney General of the United States.
So can I talk to you, Senator, about the climate in the Senate right now? Because you have an awesome task. You have awesome tasks that you're facing right now with confirming a lot of these nominees and appointees. You're supposed to be the folks with the level head. What's the climate like now in the Senate?
Well, this is a time when we can't debate nominees. The Republicans are determined to just cram them down our throats sideways. You tell me a time in American history, after we had a Department of Education, when it was that someone who basically doesn't believe in public education would become the Secretary of Education, and it could get so little support in the Senate that literally 50 divide, that there were Democrats, Republicans, independents voting against her, and they would haul the Vice President of the United States over here to do a tiebreaker so that she can go run the Department of Education. This is a shocking moment. You just can't believe this kind of thing is going on. And the same sort of thing now with Jeff Sessions. That their argument here is you can't talk about the bad things he did. That if we're going to go ahead and talk about Jeff Sessions, that's fine, if you have nice things to say. And if you have nice things to say, you're allowed to stand up and talk. But if you don't, which I didn't, then the answer is you got to sit down and just close your mouth.
What are you going to do now?
I'm not going to the floor of the Senate to speak. I've been out there on the floor of the Senate. I literally cannot be recognized on the floor of the Senate. I have become a non-person during the discussion of Jeff Sessions.
Are you hearing from other senators?
Yes.
What are they saying?
And great solidarity on this. Kamala Harris, for example, she stood up because she could still get recognized after I had been gavelled down and told I had to be quiet. And she moved to let me speak on the floor of the Senate. Of course, that was denied. She appealed the ruling of the chair. And there have been several other people who stood up and talked about this. But I have to say, be clear, Republicans have stood up too. And they have said, no, no, no. They haven't said that Jeff Sessions has a good record. They haven't defended Jeff Sessions on the facts, on the merits. They have said, you are not allowed to talk about him if you're going to say something like this.
Senator Elizabeth Warren.
And we sure don't want to hear from Coretta Scott King about what happened back in the 1980s.
Senator Warren, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
And listen, we have not had a chance to hear from the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He is free to call in or to come in and do an interview. Whoever he chooses to respond will accept. Again, our thanks to Senator Elizabeth Warren. Let's discuss this now. I want to bring in Mark Preston and David Gergen for reaction. First to you, Mark, what's going on here?
You know, Don, I spent a lot of time up in the United States Senate covering the chamber. It was 6-7 years that I was up there. I've never seen anything like this. Now, I've seen partisanship boil up to a point where you actually had senators really have tough moments, but certainly not in this type of case. And, you know, in many ways, Elizabeth Warren not being able to go to the floor anymore to talk, I don't think she has to anymore, quite frankly. The attention and the focus on her and that letter from Coretta Scott King is certainly going to become more attention will be driven to it now, given what has happened than had she just given a speech and had just moved on. But yes, tension is very, very high in the U.S. Senate.
I was just going to say, David Gergen, if you read this letter, it's not a very flattering letter. As a matter of fact, let me quickly, I'll read it as quickly as I can. It says, and this is 1986, and it's from Coretta Scott King, and it's to Senator Strom Thurmond. It says, I write to express my sincere opposition to the confirmation of Jefferson B. Sessions as a federal district court judge for the Southern District of Alabama. My professional and personal roots in Alabama are deep and lasting. Anyone who has used the power of his office as United States Attorney to intimidate and chill the free exercise of the ballot by citizens should not be elevated to our courts. Mr. Sessions has used the awesome power of his office in a shabby attempt to intimidate and frighten elderly black voters. For this reprehensible conduct, he should not be rewarded with a federal judgeship. I regret that a long-standing commitment prevents me from appearing in person to testify against this nominee. However, I have attached a copy of my statement opposing Mr. Sessions' confirmation, and I request that my statement, as well as this letter, be made a part of the hearing record. I do sincerely urge you to oppose the confirmation of Mr. Sessions. Sincerely, Coretta Scott King, and then she's the Honorable Judge Joseph Biden as well at the U.S. Senate. It was a CC there. They have done her a favor by giving her this platform, a bigger megaphone to get this out. David?
Absolutely. A powerful letter. Technically, of course, Senator McConnell invoked a provision, a rule of the Senate, that does apply in a technical sense, but whether he was wise to do it, I think is a very different matter.